Jews in Eastern Europe lived in segregated communities called Shtetls. They were vulnerable to attacks and raids called pogroms. Professor Steven Zipperstein says during an interview that a combination of factors ended up making Kishinev into the history it became. It was the first major anti-Jewish riot at the beginning of the 20th century, and is the first Jewish tragedy that gets photographed, appearing prominently in newspapers around the world.
One time they were hiding in a haystack with their mother, and the Cossacks came, and they took their bayonets, and they were stabbing in the haystack, and they stabbed my grandmother's leg. She died with the scar, but she never said a word, because if she had said something, they would have killed them all. But there's an expression that said, and Jewish heads will roll. They would come out after a pogrom, and there would be heads in the street.
In just 4 days from October 31st, 1905 to November 3rd, there were 639 pogroms in Russia. Jews were persecuted on the basis of their faith, so they fled to America for religious and economic freedom. American legislators passed laws in 1921 and 1924 to regulate immigration from what they viewed as undesirable places in the world like Poland and Russia. According to Professor Robert Sladen, these bills were directed at preventing Jewish immigration. After 1924, there was a 90% decrease in Jewish immigration to America. Jack, Joseph, and Miriam Mandel arrived in America on June 29, 1920. The oldest brother, Jack, was born in 1911. Their father, Simon, immigrated from a shell called Kolbaszeva in Nabe-Sans, Poland in 1913, planning on bringing the rest of his family over when he had the financial means to do so. On the boat to America, the brothers were located in steerage class. They had to compete with other voyagers for buckets of herring. Growing up, the Mandel family moved frequently because they could not afford to pay their monthly rent. Their parents ran a dry goods shop. Despite their financial situation, their mother, Rose Mandel, always gave charity. Their mother instilled the value of giving back to her children. With moral guidance from their mother, the Mandel brothers were able to achieve great philanthropic success down the road.
People would come to my mother, and this is in the 30s.
All right.
This is in was the Great Depression in America. And they say, Mrs. Mandel, I'd like to borrow $20. My daughter's getting married, and I need to buy a dress. $20 then, I think, could buy a dress. And my mother always said the same thing. Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Geschmarnowitz, whatever, take it. I'm not going to lend it to you. Take it. You'll find a way to pay me back.
Jews were not safe from anti-Semitism in America. In 1913, Leo Frank, a Jewish factory manager in Atlanta, Georgia, was wrongfully convicted of murdering Mary Fagan, a 13-year-old factory worker. During the trial, very little evidence was produced, and the prosecution's case rested on the false testimony of a man named Jim Connolly. Outside the courthouse, a large crowd yelled, "Hang the Jew," in unison. Frank was convicted of a murder he did not commit because of the rabid anti-Semitism he faced as a Jew in the early 1900s. Shortly after his conviction, 25 men broke into his prison and drove him 150 miles to Cobb County, where he was brutally hanged. Events like these are what newly arrived Jewish immigrants at the time had to be wary of, including the Mandel brothers and their family. Penny Weinberg recounts the instances of anti-Semitism that she and her family experienced.
When I went to Shaker, there were not many Jews there. It was very, very segregated. There was the Jewish crowd, the Gentile crowd. There were very few blacks. But Jewish crowd and Gentile crowd, you just didn't mix it. They all went to the city, and they wanted the city to not let us build on that lot because we were Jewish. But they let us build. We never met a neighbor, never saw a neighbor, never had any contact with any of the neighbors on the street.
In 1933, Jack started to work at his Uncle Jacob's auto parts store for $10 a week. After working at the store for 6 years, their uncle offered to sell the store to the brothers. The brothers pooled their money and bought the store for $900 in 1940. The brothers named their store Premier Automotive Supply Company after the shipping boxes given to them by their uncle Conrad. The boxes had the word Premier written across them. One of the things the company produced was high-quality plated bolts and nuts that resisted rusting, an idea new to the industry. Premier Fastener was formed as a subsidiary in 1954, and in 1960, the company, now called Premier Industrial Corporation, became a multi-million-dollar business after its stock was offered for public sale.
We learned early on something that maybe other people always knew, I don't know, but we learned early on that the key to our growth was not strategy, it was people. That you needed strategy, you needed to have plans, but you really need people to execute them.
In 1996, Premier Industrial Corporation was acquired for $2.8 billion by a British electronics company called Farnell Electronics plc. The brothers began to realize they had too much wealth for a small group of people and began the process of giving away vast sums of money to the Jewish and Cleveland communities alike.
We used to sit around a table and we would say, you know, Ma wouldn't like that. Now, I can't explain to you why we said that. I think to this day I'm trying to please my mother.
The Mandel Foundation was created in 1953. Their mission is to contribute to the flourishing of the United States and Israel as just, inclusive, compassionate, and democratic societies, and to improve the quality of life in both countries.
Coming here to the school when it was formerly named Agnon, there had also been a relationship, a financial relationship with the foundation. But after a few years, I began to develop a more direct connection to the foundation and to Mr. Mandel.
We've lasted 3,000 years as a religious denomination. So if you ask me, I want another 3,000 years. And what can we do to make that possible in a way that gives meaning to it, where understanding the Jewish tradition and the history and Jewish values can be an enriching experience.
The foundation donated money to Temple Tifereth Israel, the Mandel Jewish Community Center, Case Western Reserve University, the South Euclid Public Library, and the Joseph and Florence Mandel Jewish Day School, formerly known as the Agnon School.
I had some large thoughts in mind. On the other hand, I wasn't going to be presumptuous to say there is going to be X figure down the road. Like any other solicitation, it's really a conversation about values and about vision. At the end of the day, Mort's also still a business person. In the best sense of the word, he's an investor. So he's investing in a Jewish future here. He uses the phrase, let's change the landscape. How are we going to affect change that's going to impact the community in the next generation?
Despite arriving in America with no money, facing an uphill battle in a climate of prejudice and hate, Jack, Joseph, and Morin Mandel were able to achieve great success in the business world. Their persistence, ingenuity, and intelligence allowed them to turn $900 into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. The brothers made a lasting impact by redistributing their vast earnings to assist in Jewish continuity as well as the advancement of the world.